alternatives and turnarounds. And so our company has already gone public, but we are getting a little bit too big now. Our firm has been in operation for about 30 years now. It's getting too big and bureaucratic. Growth is slow. So we might have to turn around the company or maybe deal with a private equity firm and take the company private. We're not sure yet. We talked to consultants before. We don't know what to do. So let's talk about alternatives. Okay, so we are now in the last stage, right? We're in the home stretch. We've come a long way. We've gone through almost the entire life cycle of a company, from birth, meaning seed investment, to getting a couple of venture capital investment rounds, to looking at debt, to taking the company public through Goldman Sachs. We looked at management consulting alternatives as well. And now we're at the point where there's blood in the water, so to speak. We're just not growing. And so vultures are surrounding us, and we might have to go private. We don't know yet. And if we do, we'll deal with a firm called KKR. Okay, so let's keep going. We're almost done here. Okay, great. So we're going to talk about financing alternatives, harvesting, and turnarounds. So the first topic we're going to talk about, topic 1 of 3, is financing alternatives. And so equity investors are always better for startups, always, okay? Because if you had debt investors in your company and you were just starting out and you missed just one payment, then your business dies. Don't ever take on debt when you're starting a company, ever, period. And if you have to for some reason, I hope you don't have to, then please register your company as an LLC or a limited liability corporation, because I want you to protect your family and your personal assets. So that if you do get sued or your company goes into bankruptcy, they can't come after your house, which hurts your children, your family, etc. And so I know a lot of people feel that giving up equity sucks, but Bill Gates did this. Steve Jobs did this. Mark Zuckerberg did this. A lot of very successful people did. And it's just a better way to grow your business. Okay, so let's talk about additional sources of financing. So raising money is very tough, okay? And should you pay upfront fees to a consultant to raise money if you ever need money? The answer is absolutely not. 99% of the times it is fraudulent and it doesn't work. Okay, so fees after trump fees before. So the best example I can give you this is in real estate. You don't pay commissions to a real estate broker until after the sale has been done, never before. Okay, so you're going to meet a lot of dishonest people in business, especially when it comes to raising money, and I want you to keep your guard up. And again, use your gut. If you sense somebody is unethical, go with your gut. Your gut is more often right than wrong. Okay. So let's talk about commercial and venture bank lending, right? We talked about venture capital, meaning equity lending. Let's talk about venture debt now a little bit, okay? And I just want to give you alternative ways to look at raising money or turning around a company. So commercial loans are possible with a couple years of operating history. Obviously, don't do it early on when you're cash flow negative. Otherwise, there's a good chance your company will die. Okay, so commercial lenders really want to see cash flow projections based on a couple of years of history. Okay, so they care a little bit less about the value of your assets unless you're extremely liquid. Okay, extremely liquid. That's why they look at liquidity ratios, which we talked about before, liquidity ratios. So lenders hate giving money to early stage companies, as the government really harasses them about non-performing loans, especially after 2008, and it's understandable. VC firms love risk. Debt firms hate risk. Okay, but hold on a second. There's a bank that we quickly talked about earlier in this course that has a brand that implies that they lend to venture startups. And it's a great company called Silicon Valley Bank. Okay, and Silicon Valley Bank will lend to venture capital-backed startups. In return, they get interest because it's debt, and more importantly, they get warrants. Remember, warrants are kind of like options. They get stock in the company, right? So for venture capital firms, equity is the main course. For venture debt firms, or VD firms, I should probably rephrase that, but for venture debt firms, equity is actually just the sweetener. Okay. Now, entrepreneurs love to partner with venture capital firms for the most part before entrepreneurs partner with venture debt firms. So when you're doing a late stage round, you might partner with a venture debt firm because the probability of your firm being able to pay back the debt goes up a lot if you're a later stage company with more cash flow or more operating experience. So all the hard work and due diligence was already done by the venture capital firm. And then the venture debt firm tends to jump on the bandwagon, right? Now, here's some reasons why you might not get debt financing or a loan. If you don't have at least a couple years of financials. If you don't have that many tangible assets that the bank can repossess if your firm goes belly up. And if you have very low revenue, which occurs in technology all the time, which is why a lot of tech firms love to deal with venture capital first. Or if one or two of your employees are way too valuable. You know, there's that clause. It sounds awful, but what if they get hit by a bus? Okay, let's talk about other forms of debt. Credit cards. 50% of all startups use credit cards for debt. Don't get romanced by teaser rates. Be very careful of this. If your credit rating sucks, you'll never be able to raise debt again. So just be very careful. There's also foreign investor funding sources, right? So the U.S. government actually lets you buy lawful permanent residence into America. You can buy the American dream if you invest $1 million in a startup or create or preserve 10 jobs. The minimum drops to $500,000 if it's in a less desirable region of the country or a region where there's very high unemployment. And it's amazing because a lot of people actually buy the American dream. Okay. Now, it's even easier for a foreigner to get access to America and become a citizen here if they invest in a turnaround, right? So money talks. Additional government loans are for Native Americans, for Hawaiians, for women, and also for veterans. In terms of vendor financing, sometimes you'll see payable in 2-10 net 30. That means you get a 2% discount if you pay in 10 days, or else it's due in 30 days. This is a dumb idea. Don't ever do this because as that 2% discount for 10 days is annualized, that's actually a rate of over 40%. That's called vendor financing. Vendor leasing, right? It's kind of like what Silicon Valley Bank does, but for loans, except you basically lease equipment, which means you kind of rent it, and part of the payment is through warrants. Other financing examples include the following. The company can get a mortgage if they own the business and the building. There's direct public offerings, which basically means you can get a loan for up to $1 million through a syndicate of many investors. And there's a lot more detail online on all of these topics. I just want to expose you to everything, right? And you can always do a Google search on them later. Okay, so bootstrapping. Bootstrapping means you pay for the startup yourself early on, okay? But I advise always against doing this. You always want to use OPM, which of course we know from earlier in this course stands for other people's money, okay? Unless you're loaded, that is. And again, you want to set up that LLC so that your family is protected.